100 years today if Bill Travers was still here. An amazing man. I never had the opportunity to meet him. Obviously, I know Will Travers well, his son, and Virginia, because I've worked with the charity for over 8 years, and it's been a real privilege. But just to tell you a few words about what made, I think, Bill unique in many ways. He had a very distinguished military career, and he served in the Special Forces, effectively, in Burma, in the war, in one of the most difficult theatres of conflict, and actually was behind the lines doing commando operations, effectively leading troops. Now you can imagine what he saw and what he did. It had a profound impact on him in relation to how cruel man can be in the darkness of war. We've all seen what that means, most recently, of course, in Ukraine as well. He also, interestingly enough, was one of the first independent observers of the nuclear bomb dropped, I think, on Nagasaki, Hiroshima. It was one of those cities. And he actually wrote a very personal diary, which was released into the media a few years ago, that emerged, I think, from some papers that Virginia and Will found, just to talk about what he saw and the impact of that nuclear blast on the population of that Japanese city. And I think it was fair to say, like many people of his generation, he became very profoundly upset with the way that mankind can be, and that increasingly had an impact, I think, on his later life. He went, of course, to be an actor, and a very good actor. And you'll see lots of his films, British and American films, where he acted with Sidney Poitier, James Garner, amazing actors over the years. And also, of course, him and Virginia acted together in films, great British films, and they were really a star couple in their day. And they would have been huge in Hollywood as well. But they made Born Free as a film that they had a real passion and interest in. But what happened with Born Free is that when they made it as actors, they started to get concerned about the fate of the animals that were used in the film, which were largely brought in from European zoos. Some were brought from various military mascots for regiments in different parts of the world. And obviously they did all the filming with these animals, and they began to understand them and encounter them during the filming of this amazing story. But then they started to talk to the producers and filmmakers about what needed to be done to protect the animals. Now the animals effectively were not the concern of the filmmakers. All they wanted to do was parcel them back to own them, i.e. the various zoos and places that had come from in Europe. And that profoundly upset Bill and Virginia. And when they came back from filming, they started to talk about their concerns in a way that wasn't considered appropriate, if that's the word to use, for actors of their generation. And I remember seeing an interview with Virginia a number of years ago where she said that basically the producers of the film said, if you go on doing this, you're never going to work again. We've got a really good product here, you've worked on it, we're ready to publicise it, and there's you starting talking about animal rights. That's not what we're here to do, this is entertainment, we obviously want to make money. But I think ultimately Born Free went on to be a very successful film. You'll hear the theme tune from Matt Monro in a moment, that went on to win an Oscar in 1966. It had its royal premiere at Leicester Square, the Queen was there. It's a film that's had a profound impact on me. I'm sure many of you here have watched it, and generations continue to watch it. And it really starts to make us think about our connections with wildlife, about Africa, about what's happening in the world. And I think it's as relevant today as it was all those years ago. But after making that film, Bill and Virginia really started to think that actually showbiz and celebrity wasn't really what they wanted to do. They made one other film called Saving Polly, I think the name of the film, which is about an elephant again. A story similar to Born Free, where the elephant actually itself was given by the Kenyan government to the filmmakers, and Poli Poli is the name of the film. And they both had a dispute with the filmmakers again, saying they wanted the elephant to be returned to the wild, and the Kenyan government said, well, if we do that, we're just going to have to take another one for the wild and give it to London Zoo, because that's what we agreed to do. So in the end, Poli Poli went to London Zoo. Bill and Virginia, I think, were by then committed to wanting to work for animal protection, and they started to go and work looking at zoos around Britain and Europe. They set up Zoo Check. They started to make films about what the conditions were of animals in captivity, and they started to challenge the orthodox view that zoos were educational, were good, and actually, as we know, they're largely exploitive and can be very cruel to the animals that are kept within their bars. But Poli Poli didn't go away, because there's a very famous picture of Bill and Virginia when they went back to London Zoo in 1983. London Zoo tried to keep them out because they knew they would bring the media with them. They didn't want them to see the elephant they'd worked with in 1970. But they did get in on this day in 1983, and there's a very famous picture of them reaching over, and Poli Poli is literally going to them, really recognises them. But the elephant, by then, after 13 years of captivity, was in a very, very poor condition. Literally, it was dying in front of their eyes, and I think that really profoundly upset both of them. In the end, London Zoo agreed that it should go to Whipsnade, but the animal was so ill that I believe it wasn't even fit enough to make the journey. So it died soon after when they saw it in captivity. And the animal was, I think, 15, 16 years of age. And that's what captivity does to an animal like an elephant that would have a much longer life in the wild. And that's really where they went from there. And they went on to form the Born Free Foundation I work for now. Bill went on to make a lot of contributions to the debate scientifically and ethically about animals in captivity, and they began to really open this broader discussion about the future of Africa's wildlife and our relationship with the natural world. So this big, strong, physical man that had gone through the horrors of war changed his life alongside his wife to become animal campaigners. And I think they were ahead of their time. And I think the legacy Bill has left behind, and Virginia is now in her 90s and is still doing incredible work, but the legacy inevitably she will leave behind will be something very special. So I think today is right that we remember Bill Travers. It's right that we remember what he did with Born Free, but what he actually went through in his life and how he realized that as humans we can be very cruel to each other, but ultimately we all share this planet with the natural world and we must do what we can to defend it. So thank you very much for listening.